There are places in this world that remember things. Not the way people remember, with photographs and stories and fading memories that lose detail over time. No, these places remember everything. Every version of you that ever walked through their doors. Every choice you almost made. Every person you could have been. Sarah Bennett didn't know this when she signed the lease for the house on Ashwood Lane. She thought she was running away from her old life. From the failed marriage that had left her hollowed out and questioning everything. From the job that had slowly crushed her spirit over 5 years. From the city that felt like it was suffocating her with every breath. She thought she was running toward peace, toward healing, toward a fresh start in a quiet little town where nobody knew her name or her failures. She had no idea she was running toward something much worse. The town was called Millbrook. Population 4,000 and change. The kind of place you pass through on a road trip and immediately forget. Main Street had a coffee shop, a hardware store, a post office that closed at 3. The houses were old but well-maintained. White picket fences. Trees that had been growing for 100 years. Everything was clean and quiet and perfectly ordinary. Sarah's house was on the edge of town, down a gravel road that wound through thick woods. It was a 2-story craftsman-style home, pale blue with white trim. The porch wrapped around the front and side. There was a garden that had gone wild, roses climbing up a trellis, ivy creeping along the foundation. The landlord, a man named Gerald Pritchard, met her there on a gray September afternoon. He was in his 60s, thin and weathered, with hands that shook slightly when he gave her the keys. "It's been empty for about 8 months," he said. "Previous tenant left pretty suddenly. Didn't even take all her things. You'll find some furniture still inside." Sarah looked at the house. Something about it felt strange. Not wrong exactly. Just strange. Like it was watching her. Why did she leave? Gerald's face tightened. Work opportunity. You know how it is. People come and go. Did she like it here? At first. He handed her the keys and turned to leave, then paused. There's a lot of mirrors in the house. The previous owner had a thing about them. If they bother you, you can take them down. Mirrors don't bother me. Gerald looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were sad. Good. That's good. Well, welcome to Millbrook, Sarah. I hope you find what you're looking for here. He left before she could ask what he meant by that. Sarah walked up the porch steps and unlocked the front door. It swung open with a low creak, and she stepped inside. The first thing she noticed was how bright it was. Sunlight poured through the windows, catching on surfaces and throwing light across the hardwood floors. And there were mirrors everywhere. In the hallway. In the living room. Above the fireplace. On the walls going up the stairs. Big ornate ones with gold frames. Small simple ones in plain wood. Antique mirrors with glass that looked wavy and old. She could see herself reflected a dozen times. Standing in the doorway with her suitcase. Her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her face tired and pale. 34 years old and feeling older. All the reflections stared back at her. Sarah told herself it was just a lot of mirrors. That's all. Some people collected mirrors. It was eccentric but harmless. She could take them down if they bothered her. But they didn't bother her. Not yet. She spent the first day unpacking and exploring. The house was fully furnished. Couch and armchairs in the living room. A dining table. A bed upstairs in the master bedroom. Dishes in the kitchen. Towels in the bathroom. It was like someone had been living here and then just vanished, leaving everything behind. In the bedroom closet, she found clothes. Women's clothes. Size medium, same as Sarah. Jeans and sweaters and dresses. They looked new, barely worn. Sarah pushed them aside and hung up her own things, trying not to think about the woman who'd left them behind. That night, she made tea and sat on the couch and tried to feel relieved. She'd done it. She'd escaped. She was here in this quiet place, with nothing but time to figure out who she was supposed to be now that everything had fallen apart. But sitting there in the stillness, she felt a creeping unease she couldn't quite name. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that made you aware of every small sound. The settling of old wood. The whisper of wind against windows. The ticking of a clock somewhere she couldn't see. And the mirrors. They were all around her, reflecting the room back at itself. Reflecting her, sitting on the couch with her tea. She looked small in them. Alone. She went to bed early and dreamed of her ex-husband standing in a room full of mirrors, all of them showing different versions of him, and none of them looking at her. The next morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. She lay there for a moment, orienting herself. New house. New town. Fresh start. She could do this. She got up and walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, looked in the mirror above the sink, and froze. Her reflection looked wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Not in a way she could easily point to. But something about the face staring back at her was off. The eyes maybe. They looked harder. Colder. Or maybe it was the set of her mouth. Tight and angry in a way Sarah didn't feel. She blinked and the reflection blinked with her. She raised her hand and the reflection raised its hand. Everything matched. Of course it matched. She was being ridiculous. She splashed water on her face and told herself she was imagining things. She was tired. Stressed. Starting over in a new place was hard. Her mind was playing tricks on her. But all day, she kept catching glimpses of herself in the mirrors around the house. And each time there was something slightly off. A posture that didn't feel like hers. An expression she didn't remember making. Once, passing by the mirror in the hallway, she could have sworn her reflection smiled before she did. That afternoon, she went into town to buy groceries. The supermarket was small and old-fashioned, with narrow aisles and fluorescent lights that hummed. Sarah filled her basket with basics. Bread, eggs, coffee, vegetables. At the checkout, the cashier was a woman in her 50s with bright red lipstick and a name tag that said Denise. "You're new in town," Denise said. It wasn't a question. "Just moved in yesterday. Where are you staying?" "The house on Ashwood Lane. The blue one." Denise's hands paused over the register keys. She looked up, her eyes searching Sarah's face. "That house. You know it. Everyone knows it. It's been through a lot of tenants over the years." The landlord said the last one left for work. Denise made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Sure. Work. That's what they always say." She finished ringing up the groceries. "How are you finding it so far?" "Fine. It's quiet. Quiet. Right." Denise bagged the groceries slowly. "Listen, honey. If things start feeling strange there, if you start noticing things that don't quite add up, don't ignore it. Trust your gut." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of things? But Denise just smiled, sad and knowing. You'll know when it happens. And when it does, remember that you always have a choice. You don't have to stay. Sarah wanted to ask more, but there was a line forming behind her. She took her groceries and left, Denise's words echoing in her head. That night, Sarah made dinner and ate it at the dining table, trying to ignore the large mirror on the wall across from her. But she kept glancing at it, kept watching her reflection eat. And the reflection looked like it was watching her back. After dinner, she decided to work on her laptop. She'd been thinking about starting a freelance business, doing graphic design from home. It was why she'd moved here, to have the space and time to build something new. She sat up at the dining table and opened her laptop. Hours passed. She got absorbed in creating a logo design, tweaking colors and fonts. At some point, she became aware of the reflection of her laptop screen in the mirror behind her. She could see the glow of it, the movement as she scrolled and clicked. Then she noticed something. In the mirror's reflection of her screen, the design was different. The colors were wrong. The layout had changed. She was looking at two different versions of the same work. One on her actual screen, and another in the mirror. She turned to look directly at the mirror. The reflection showed her sitting at the table. Showed the laptop. But the image on the reflected screen was definitely different from what was actually on her laptop. Sarah's heart began to pound. She closed the laptop and stood up. Walked over to the mirror. Stared at her reflection. The reflection stared back. It looked like her. Exactly like her. Same clothes, same hair, same everything. She raised her left hand. The reflection raised its right hand, the way reflections do. She tilted her head. The reflection tilted its head. Normal. Everything was normal. But her hands were shaking. She went upstairs to bed but couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to the house. And she kept thinking about what Denise had said. If you start noticing things that don't quite add up, Don't ignore it. The mirrors were wrong. She knew it. She could feel it in her bones. But wrong how? Wrong in what way? They were just mirrors. Just glass and silver and light. They couldn't do anything but reflect. Could they? The next few days passed in a haze of growing unease. Sarah tried to settle into a routine. She worked on her laptop. She went for walks in the woods behind the house. She drove into town for coffee and groceries. She tried to feel normal. But the mirrors kept showing her things that weren't quite right. One morning, she was brushing her teeth in the bathroom when she saw, in the corner of the mirror, her reflection setting down the toothbrush. But Sarah hadn't set it down yet. She was still brushing. She stopped mid-motion and stared. The reflection continued to move independently for just a second, rinsing its mouth, before it snapped back into sync. Another time, she was reading on the couch and glanced up at the mirror across the room. Her reflection was looking down at the book. But its expression was different. Angry. Resentful. Like it hated the book. Hated reading. Hated being there. Sarah didn't feel angry. She felt fine. But the reflection looked furious. And once, late at night, she woke up thirsty and went downstairs for water. She passed the mirror in the hallway. In the darkness, she could just barely see her reflection. It was standing there in her pajamas, just like her. But as she walked past, the reflection didn't move. It stayed standing in place, watching her go. Sarah stopped, turned around, looked back at the mirror. The reflection was gone. The glass showed only the empty hallway. She ran back upstairs and didn't come down until morning. She told herself she was losing it. That the stress of the divorce and the move had broken something in her brain. That she needed to see a therapist, get on medication, something. But a part of her, a deep and primal part, knew that what was happening was real. The mirrors were doing something. Showing something. She didn't know what or why, but it was real. She decided to cover them up. If she couldn't see the mirrors, maybe the wrongness would stop. She found old sheets in the linen closet and began draping them over the mirrors around the house. In the living room. In the hallway. In the dining room. She covered them all. But she couldn't bring herself to cover the one in the bathroom. She needed it. And the one in the bedroom felt too big, too heavy to cover properly. So those two remained exposed. That night, she lay in bed staring at the mirror on the wall across from her. It was an antique, probably 100 years old, with an ornate wooden frame carved with roses and vines. In the dim light from the window, she could see her shape in it. A dark form in a bed. As she watched, the form in the mirror sat up. Sarah hadn't sat up. She was still lying down. But the reflection was sitting, clear as day, in the same bed, in the same room, but sitting upright. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She didn't move. Couldn't move. She just stared. The reflection turned its head, looked directly at her, and smiled. Not Sarah's smile. Something else. Something cold and cruel and knowing. Sarah screamed and lunged out of bed, grabbing her phone and running out of the room. She spent the rest of the night in her car in the driveway, doors locked, lights on, shaking with terror. In the morning, weak sunlight filtered through the trees. Sarah sat in her car, exhausted and terrified, trying to decide what to do. She could leave, pack up her things and go. Forget the lease, forget the money, just get out. But go where? Back to the city? Back to her old apartment where her ex-husband might still come by unannounced? Back to the job that had drained the life out of her? She had nowhere else to go. This was supposed to be her fresh start. This was supposed to save her. She went back inside. The house looked normal in the daylight. Peaceful even. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen table and tried to think rationally. Maybe she'd been half asleep. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe she'd imagined it. But she knew she hadn't. She decided to go into town and ask questions. Find out what people knew about this house. There had to be a history. There had to be a reason. She found the coffee shop on Main Street and ordered a latte. The woman behind the counter was young, maybe mid-20s, with purple streaks in her hair and kind eyes. Her name tag said Riley. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. "Do you know anything about the house on Ashwood Lane? The blue one?" Riley's expression shifted. Guarded. "I know of it. I'm renting it." And things have been happening. Strange things. With the mirrors. Riley set down the cup she was holding. You're living there now? Yes. How long? About a week. Riley leaned in close and lowered her voice. Listen to me very carefully. That house is not safe. I don't know what it is or how it works, but people who stay there too long start to change. They start to lose themselves. You need to leave before it's too late. Too late for what? Before you become what the house wants you to be. Sarah felt ice in her veins. What does that mean? The house shows you things. Different versions of yourself. Versions that made different choices. Versions that became different people. And the longer you stay, the more those versions start to bleed into you. You start to lose track of which one is really you. That's impossible. Is it? Riley's eyes were intense. Have you been noticing things? Seeing yourself do things you don't remember doing? Feeling like you're not quite yourself? Sarah thought about the reflection that moved independently. The angry face in the mirror. The figure that sat up while she lay still. Yes. Riley nodded. It's already started. The house is trying to decide which version of you to keep. And whatever version it chooses, that's what you'll become. The other versions, the other yous, they'll just fade away. This is insane. Houses don't do that. Mirrors don't do that. This one does. There's something in that place. Something that feeds on identity, on possibility, on all the paths not taken. Every person who lives there gets pulled into it. Most of them escape in time. But some don't. Riley's voice dropped to a whisper. Some of them stay too long. And when they leave, they're not the same person who moved in. Sarah's hands were shaking. The woman before me. The one who left suddenly. What happened to her? I don't know. I never met her. But I heard she checked herself into a psychiatric hospital about 6 months after she left. Said she didn't know who she was anymore. Said there were too many versions of her and she couldn't tell which one was real. Sarah stood up, her latte forgotten. She needed air. She needed to think. Where are you going? Riley called after her. Back to the house. I need to see something. Don't go back there alone. Please. But Sarah was already out the door. She drove back to Ashwood Lane too fast, gravel spraying under her tires. She burst into the house and went straight to the living room, pulled the sheet off the large mirror above the fireplace, stared at her reflection. It looked like her. Exactly like her. Same clothes, same face, same everything. But as she watched, the reflection's expression changed, became softer, sadder, and then it spoke. Sarah didn't speak. Her mouth didn't move. But the reflection's lips moved, forming words. Help me. Sarah stumbled backward. What are you? The reflection tilted its head. I'm you. One of you. The one who's still fighting. Fighting what? The house. It wants to choose. It wants to decide which version of you is real. Which version gets to exist. The rest of us will disappear. How many versions are there? The reflection's eyes filled with tears. I don't know anymore. Dozens maybe. Every choice you could have made. Every path you could have taken. Every person you could have become. We're all here in the mirrors, waiting to see which one survives. Sarah sank to the floor. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But deep down, she knew it was. She'd felt it from the first day. The wrongness. The sense of being watched and judged and measured. How do I stop it? You can't. The only way out is to leave before the house makes its choice. Once it decides, you're stuck. You become that version forever, and all the other possibilities die. But which version am I? Right now, talking to you, which one am I? The reflection smiled sadly. I don't know. None of us do. That's the horror of it. We all think we're the real one. Sarah looked around at all the covered mirrors in the house. Under each sheet was another version of her. Another life she could have lived. Another choice she could have made. They were all here, trapped in glass and silver, fighting to be real. She thought about Riley's warning. About the woman before her who'd lost her mind. About Gerald's sad eyes when he'd handed her the keys. They'd all known. Everyone in town knew what this house did. And they'd let her move in anyway. She stood up, decision made. She would pack her things tonight and leave in the morning. She'd break the lease, lose the deposit, whatever. She didn't care. She just needed to get out before it was too late. But that night, as she was packing, she made the mistake of looking in the bedroom mirror one more time. And she saw herself. But not the current her. A different version. This Sarah looked confident. Put together. She was wearing a business suit and her hair was styled perfectly. She looked successful. Happy. Like she'd made all the right choices. Sarah touched the mirror. Who are you? The successful Sarah smiled. I'm who you could be. The version that didn't give up. That fought through the divorce and the job and the pain and came out stronger. Don't you want to be me? This isn't real. It could be. The house can make it real. All you have to do is stay. Let it choose this version. You could wake up tomorrow as me, with my life, my success, my happiness. Sarah's hand trembled against the glass. God, she was tempted. She was so tired of being broken and lost and afraid. The idea of becoming this better version of herself was intoxicating. But then she saw movement in the mirror's background. Another reflection. This one looked hollow, dead-eyed, broken in a way that could never be fixed. It was her too. The version that had given up entirely. The version that had let the pain consume her. And she realized the truth. The house wasn't trying to help her. It was trying to trap her. To make her choose a single identity and stick to it forever, killing off all the other possibilities, all the other futures she might have had. She pulled her hand away from the mirror. No. I don't want to be any single version. I want to be all of them. The good and the bad. The strong and the weak. That's what makes me human. The successful Sarah's smile faded. Then you'll have to leave. The house won't let you stay if you won't choose. Good. I'm leaving in the morning. But when morning came, Sarah discovered she couldn't leave. She tried. She loaded her car with her suitcases. She got in and turned the key. But the car wouldn't start. The engine clicked uselessly. She tried walking. But every time she reached the end of the driveway and tried to turn onto the road, her legs wouldn't move. Like they were rooted to the ground. Like something invisible was holding her there. The house wouldn't let her go. She went back inside, panic rising in her chest. She called Riley at the coffee shop. I can't leave. I tried, but I can't leave. You've been there too long, Riley said, her voice tight with fear. The house has already started the choosing process. You have to make a decision. You have to pick which version of yourself you want to be, or the house will pick for you. I don't want to choose. Then you'll fracture. You'll split into pieces and none of them will be real. That's what happened to the others who refused. They're still in there, Sarah. In the mirrors. All the people who couldn't choose and couldn't leave. They're trapped in the glass forever. Sarah hung up and looked around at all the covered mirrors. She walked slowly through the house, pulling off the sheets one by one. And in each mirror, she saw a different version of herself. In one, she was a mother, holding a baby she'd never had. In another, she was old and gray, sitting alone in a nursing home. In another, she was young again, making different choices, living a completely different life. Each version looked at her with pleading eyes. Pick me, they seemed to say. Let me be real. Sarah went to the mirror in the hallway, the one where she'd first noticed something wrong. She stared at the reflection. It looked tired, scared, lost. Which one are you? She asked. The reflection didn't answer. It just stared back with the same question in its eyes. And Sarah realized the horrible truth. She didn't know which version was real anymore. She didn't know if the Sarah standing in the hallway was the original or just another reflection that had somehow escaped the glass. Maybe she'd been a reflection all along. Maybe the real Sarah had left weeks ago and what remained was just an echo, a possibility, a might have been brought to life by the house's strange hunger. She sank to the floor, her back against the wall, and laughed. It came out broken and wrong. She was losing her mind. Or maybe she'd already lost it. Maybe that was the point. The house didn't just show you different versions of yourself. It made you question which version was real until you couldn't tell anymore. That night, she dreamed she was standing in a room made entirely of mirrors. Every surface was reflective, floor to ceiling, and in each reflection was a different her. Hundreds of them. Thousands. All the Sarahs that could have been. staring at her with accusation in their eyes. And then, one by one, they began to disappear, fading like smoke, until only one remained. But Sarah couldn't tell if the one that remained was her, or if she was one of the ones that had faded. She woke up screaming. The next day, she stopped trying to leave. She stopped fighting. She just existed in the house, moving through the rooms like a ghost, looking at the mirrors, trying to find herself in them. Gerald came by to check on her. She answered the door looking hollow. He took one look at her and his face fell. "Oh no," he whispered. "You stayed too long." "I don't know who I am," Sarah said flatly. "I look in the mirrors and I see myself, but I don't know which one is real." "None of them are real," Gerald said gently. "That's what the house does. It takes who you are and breaks it into pieces and shows you all the pieces at once until you can't remember what the whole looked like. Then how do I fix it? How do I become whole again?" Gerald's eyes were sad and old. "You don't. Once the house gets this deep into you, there's no going back. The only thing you can do is choose a version and commit to it. Become that person completely. Let the others go. But what if I choose wrong? What if I pick the wrong version and spend the rest of my life as someone I'm not supposed to be? Then that's what happens. But at least you'll be someone. Right now you're no one. You're just fragments." Sarah looked past him at the trees swaying in the wind. She thought about all the versions of herself trapped in the mirrors. The successful one. The broken one. The mother. The old woman. All of them waiting to see which would survive. "There's something you should know," Gerald said quietly. "About why I rent this house. About why I keep bringing people here even though I know what it does." Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him. And she saw it. The same hollowness in his eyes that she felt in herself. "You lived here," she whispered. He nodded. 30 years ago. I was the same as you. Running from a life that had fallen apart. The house did to me what it's doing to you. Showed me all the versions of myself. Made me choose. And I did choose. I chose the version that could survive. The version that could move forward. But I lost all the others. All the possibilities. All the paths not taken. They died in those mirrors. So you keep bringing people here to what? To study what happens? To feel less alone? "No," Gerald said, and his voice broke. "I keep bringing people here because the house needs to feed. Every few years it gets hungry. If I don't bring someone, it starts pulling at me again, trying to break me back into pieces. I bring people here to save myself." Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. "You sacrificed me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I didn't have a choice. It's me or you. And I chose me." He left. Sarah watched him drive away. And she understood finally what the house was. It wasn't supernatural. It wasn't magic. It was just a place that had absorbed so much pain and indecision and fractured identity over the years that it had learned to reflect it back. To amplify it. To feed on it. And now it was feeding on her. She went back inside. Back to the mirrors. Back to all the versions of herself. She stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by her own reflections, and she made her choice. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Because staying fragmented was worse than becoming a single, incomplete version of herself. She looked at the successful Sarah in the mirror. The one with the perfect hair and the business suit and the confident smile. That was who she would be. That was who she would become. She would let all the other versions die. The sad ones. The broken ones. The mother who'd never exist. The old woman sitting alone. She would kill them all to survive as this one perfect polished version. "I choose you," she said to the reflection. The reflection smiled. And Sarah felt something shift inside her. Like pieces of herself were being torn away. Memories fading. Possibilities disappearing. All the other Sarahs dying in the mirrors, their faces pressing against the glass one last time before vanishing into nothing. It hurt. God, it hurt. Like losing parts of her soul. But when it was over, she felt whole. Solid. Real. She looked in the mirror and saw only one reflection. Herself. The successful version. The survivor. She packed her car that day and left without any trouble. The house let her go. It had what it wanted. It had made her choose. It had fed on all the possibilities she'd killed to become this one single thing. She drove away from Millbrook and never looked back. 6 months later, Sarah had a good job in the city. A nice apartment. A new wardrobe. She looked successful. Acted successful. Everyone thought she had it all together. But sometimes late at night, she'd look in the bathroom mirror and see something in her eyes. A flicker of movement. A shadow that shouldn't be there. And she'd remember all the other Sarahs. The ones she'd killed. The ones she'd sacrificed to become this. They weren't completely gone. They were still there, in the depths of her reflection, pressing against the glass, screaming silently. All the versions of herself she'd murdered to survive. She was whole now. She was real. She was one person. But she would never stop feeling like pieces of her were missing. Like she'd traded her soul for the illusion of completeness. And every time she looked in a mirror, for just a split second, she'd see them all staring back. All the Sarahs that could have been. All the lives she could have lived. Watching her. Hating her. Haunting her. Because in the end, that's what the house really did. It didn't just make you choose who to be. It made you live forever with the ghosts of everyone you could have been and decided not to be. And those ghosts never forgive you for killing them. Sarah learned to avoid mirrors after that. But you can't avoid them forever. They're everywhere. In bathrooms and bedrooms and store windows and phone screens. And every time she caught her reflection, for just a heartbeat, she'd see all the others. All the versions of herself she'd murdered. Still there. Still watching. Still waiting for the day she'd look in a mirror and finally admit the truth. That she'd chosen wrong. That she'd become the wrong version. And by then it would be too late to choose again. The house on Ashwood Lane still stands. Gerald Pritchard still rents it out. Every year or so, someone new moves in. Someone running from something. Someone looking for a fresh start. And the mirrors are always there. Waiting. Ready to show them all the versions of themselves they've been trying to escape. Ready to make them choose which one gets to be real. Because that's the thing about mirrors. They don't just reflect what is. They reflect what could be. What might have been. What you're terrified of becoming. And in that house, on Ashwood Lane, in the quiet town of Millbrook, the mirrors don't just reflect. They remember. They collect. They feed. And they never, ever let you forget all the versions of yourself you had to kill to survive.